Welcome to the first YouTube debate. My name is William Such and I'll be moderating. Our topic is the organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, Jews and Ukrainians. And our panel guests are Mr. Askold Lozynskyj, an attorney in New Jersey and former president of the Ukrainian World Congress. We also have Professor John-Paul Himka from the Department of History at the University of Alberta. Gentlemen, thank you both kindly for joining.
You're welcome.
I have taped interviews with both of you separately, and the purpose of this debate is to bring you together to highlight and examine the differences between those who maintain that the OUN and UPA deserve a revered place in Ukrainian history, and those who caution that these organizations at best shouldn't be glorified and at worst may be guilty of war crimes. So Mr. Lozynskyj, I'll begin with you. What is your position?
My position is that the OUN UPA is indispensable to understanding Ukrainian history of the 20th century. They're crucial in the sense that they're a major part of national awareness and nation building. I often use a phrase that without OUN UPA, Ukraine would in all likelihood be like Belarus. And Ukraine has had a number of problems in terms of its identity because its history over the years has been savage. And OUN UPA is very important for that history. This is a history that did not end in 1953 when apparently the last forces of the UPA were destroyed. But it's a history that survived and is very relevant today. In the book by Leonid Plющ, Internationalism or Russification, he makes a number of references to the Banderivtsi, as they're called, but he uses one in particular that in 1963 there was a march in Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, to honor the memory of Ivan Franko. And it was organized by the Ukrainian Writers Union. And they were speaking Ukrainian, that's it. And the people along Khreshchatyk that were witnessing this specifically were heard to say, look at those Banderivtsi, there are so many of them. The title Banderivtsi essentially does not necessarily refer to Stepan Bandera. It's a nom de guerre for all Ukrainians, at least as far as the Ukrainian enemy is concerned. My position vis-a-vis OUN UPA during the Second World War is that OUN UPA were not collaborating with the Nazis. They were certainly not a fascist organization. They were not even anti-Semitic because, frankly, I don't even know what anti-Semitism means because today that label is almost everywhere. Anyone who criticizes Israel is considered an anti-Semite. On the other hand, much of these disparaging items that come from many sources, and even in this case from the Holocaust industry, comes as a result of Mr. Himka's work. He is perceived as a, unfortunately, self-loathing Ukrainian. He is perceived as someone who is a hired gun, if you will, having done very little or no work on the subject of the Holocaust until very recently, meaning some 8-9 years ago, and only beginning to do this work when he was given the opportunity through financial resources and given an opportunity to smear the OUN UPA. His tactic, in my opinion, is to sling mud and hope that some of it will stick. He reaches, despite being a historian and, frankly, probably a scholar, although I don't know that much of his work, he has reached a conclusion, and then he goes out and searches for evidence, so-called evidence, to back his conclusion, as opposed to the other way around, doing research and on the basis of that research to reach a conclusion.
Okay, I thought we were supposed to answer our attitudes towards the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists and the Ukrainian Insurgent Army and not run down other people. And I would like if we could stay on subject, and I will respond to some of the things also that Mr. Lozynskyj said about me. But first of all, on the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists and UPA. During the war, and actually preparing for the war, OUN and UPA adopted a much more virulent anti-Semitism than they had previously. During the war, OUN, the militia of OUN, collaborated with the Germans in the violence of the summer of 1941, consisting of pogroms, roundups for executions, and massive beatings of the Jewish population, as well as occasional OUN murders of Jews in specific villages. All of this is well documented. Then, after the militia was destroyed or dissolved by the Nazis and replaced with Ukrainian Auxiliary Police, numerous members of the former militia went into the police. OUN urged their followers to go into the Ukrainian Auxiliary Police, and this Ukrainian Auxiliary Police was one of the most important instruments of the Holocaust in Western Ukraine, in both Galicia and Volhynia. Furthermore, when the policemen were done, when the OUN called upon them to desert and join the Ukrainian Insurgent Army, about 5,000 of these policemen did that. They launched an ethnic cleansing against the Polish population, during which time they also killed any Jews who were hiding with Poles, or actually any Jews they just found routinely in their work. And then in the winter of 1943-44, they actually lured Jews out of the bunkers and slaughtered them. They also, in the course of their fight against collectivization, killed, according to the accounts we have from Soviet documents, about 17,000 peasants. So these were people who were involved in collective farms. This all falls into the category of war criminality. It is an unfortunate thing, and it was not unusual at that time in Eastern Europe that anti-Soviet formations would become infected with the views of National Socialism and of fascism, which were very popular at that time, from Spain all the way through to Lithuania and Poland. So this is not unusual. Mr. Lozynskyj said that without OUN, UPA, Ukraine would be like Belarus. I look at it a little differently. A lot of the people in Ukraine look upon these people as fascists and as on the wrong side in World War II. Their grandfathers fought on the side of the Red Army. The Bandera group fought against the Red Army, and sometimes both in 1941 until at least September, and again when they made a truce in 1944, briefly, well, not that briefly, with the Germans. They were collaborators with the Germans. I'm going to just say a few things about me. I'm not a hired gun. I've been a Ukrainian historian for a long time. I have a lot of works to my credit, not just on the Holocaust. I received money to do research from Canada Council. I received $45,000. I received $11,200 to work at the Holocaust Museum from the Mark and Pincus Wisen Fellowship. And perhaps I'm working for the Canadians, Mr. Lozynskyj. I did not start working on the Holocaust very recently. My first publication is in 1988 on the Holocaust, and there are others one that follow, starting in the late 1990s. So it's not just recently. However, I have not made it the major source of the major focus of my research until I finished my work on Last Judgment iconography in 2007. How did I get into it? I got into it because I've always been interested in Ukrainian modern Ukrainian history. I was not working in that area originally. My first publication from about 1988 appeared in Monthly Review, and it was the memoirs of a Ukrainian Marxist who was put into Auschwitz for helping Jews in Krakow. Afterwards, I was called to write for Studies in European Jewry, a very important publication. They said they're looking for someone to write about the Ukrainian issue of collaboration in the Holocaust. Could I do it? I said, well, I've collected various notes, but I haven't actually ever done any research. I got money from my university. I was able to go to Jerusalem for a week and to Yibo for a week, and I wrote my first sort of studied article on the basis of that. I would also say this, that until sometime in the late 1980s, I was a defender of OUN, UPA, and I thought that they would be helping the Jews during the war. And what I discovered was that was not the case. Finally, a friend of mine, a Polish friend of mine, said, really, you should revise your views. Then I began to study it from the archives. First of all, from my father-in-law's archives. He was the editor of a Ukrainian newspaper under German rule, Collectivization. I looked into his files, and I wrote 2 articles already on the basis of those files about, actually 3 articles, on the basis of those files about Ukrainian anti-Semitism during the war. So I have a bit of a history here. I've done a lot of research.